Hello, Lee. Okay, I guess I should get on the camera. People have arrived. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Can't You Hear Me, Gnostic. And what is tonight's title? Let's see, what did I put down there? Dakinis, Moon Timing, and Participation Trophy World. Hello, Robin, Nathaniel, and Jessica. So I'm going to take a little time for, let people gather, and also for me to get my very frazzled ass together. It comes with the times, and it actually, my personal world is fine. It's when I go out into the world, basically on the internet, reading some forums, news, what's going on with people, and then I become a wreck. Oh my God. Plus, I've also attended, I guess, more live streams than I normally do, because live streams are getting very popular, and I think I love the concept. The events themselves are a little bit different. Raksha, I'm glad you're here. Oh, not only am I glad you're here, I'm glad you're alive. You haven't... I don't know if... I think maybe you know. I wouldn't be able to negotiate this with as much grace without having you, brother. Sanity is so in short supply. Oh, I just realized I got my head cut off here. So let me raise it up. I have a new seat. I have a new cushion on my seat to try and prevent the equivalent of bed sores forming on my butt. Hello, Speculum. Hello, Niche. No, I think yeah. I guess I could always slouch a little bit, but that doesn't work. Okay, I gotta make a real adjustment from my high chair. Niche and Jerry did a show with Randy Maugans and Emily. Thank you, Robin. I cut my hair a little bit. I took advantage of the new moon and couldn't find anybody to cut it, so I cut it myself. And that brought a little liveliness to it. Oh, thank you, Raksha. And I do feel love. I mean, I feel real good stuff coming towards me from a lot of people. And and I love them back. And as I track people that as I watch, in live chats and things, and watching how the people I love are doing, I don't always, I get concerned. And this has been a very powerful time for me, because this is the first it's going to tie in with the title here, the Dakinis Moon Timing. The Participation Trophy World, I kind of threw in there because part of I feel part of the issues, challenges, that's the word I want, is that, there are people who have kind of come out of the modern school system, and in other words, just putting your name on a list will get you credit for having participated in something that in some cases you might not have participated, but you still get credit for participating. And man, that is a seriously fucked up thing to have floating around in, a good portion of society. It is so damaging. Oh, is it damaging? Madfinger, hello and thank you for being here. So, it's the Dakinis. There's following Planetary Tantra, which John Lash, the Gnostic teacher, has been teaching for years, but I'm really applying it. I'm really applying it because it was an aspect I was missing, and it really brings you into her and what her mood is during, and the moon cycles are part of her moods. And also in my preparations on Skype messaging with John, he had mentioned, he brought it up, and because he mentioned the new moon. Actually, because when he said that we would start getting in contact after the 15th, so I had said, oh, it's the new moon when the new Dakini comes on shift. And then he gave me the explanation. No, it's like, somewhere between 36 to 48 hours. Told me how to where it is in the western sky right after sunset, and how to look at it, receive what you can, and then he said, and if and then he said, so much, and if you don't do this, it's a fail. Which was fine with me, because I don't come from the participation trophy world. I come from a pass-fail world. And I always give my best shot, and if I fail, it means I need to give it a better shot. Doesn't mean I need to put ointment on my butt because it hurts. So anyway, I went out, and I didn't have time to draw it. So the first night, that might have been a possibility. It was very overcast, leaden sky. I would say about 3 fingers of where you could see where there wasn't clouds on the horizon, and certainly that wouldn't be enough for me. The crescent moon itself would not have fit in its entirety into that little crack in the sky, between the sky and the horizon. So the next night, and I had been intending to do it, and I kind of was getting busy around sunset. And all of a sudden, I got this hit, go outside. And I look, it was 7:45, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's a good time. And I go out, and there's the beautiful crescent moon. If you were looking at it, because everything's reversing, it was, usually going to be right, kind of a smile if it's really just on its belly, but usually it has a bias left or right, and this one was biased a little bit to the right. I'd really gotten clear. I did my directions, called in the directions. Hello, Oceanside. And settled in to receive. And I get lots of research. I dig in the garden, I get all kinds of stuff. And it was a little quiet inside, and I'm going. So I'm saying, but I won't give up. I stayed out there. I put a blanket on so I could be warm enough. I was barefoot, grounded onto Mama, and as I'm looking at this beautiful crescent moon, and Venus was to the moon's right, but higher in the sky, It was really beautiful. And as I'm staring at the moon, and one of the things I did, and I shared this with John because I wanted to share with him what came to me. And it turned out I was even harsher on myself than he ultimately did. I said, originally when I had finished, I thought I got an F. But in retrospect, I think maybe I had a D. And after I showed him, he goes, boy, you're being a little hard on yourself there. So, and here's what happened. So I'm staring at the crescent. And it keeps, and I went, again, I want to reiterate, I was completely ignorant. I didn't look at anything. Anything that I came away with, I wanted to come away with from what the moon would tell me. I wanted no background, who I didn't even want the names of the Dakinis. So as I'm looking at the moon, no matter how many times I adjusted my eyes, from the upper part of the crescent, as it came down, it would bifurcate, and it was like two parallels, although the top part of the moon was connected. But as it came down, it split off. And no matter how, I could kind of make it go into one, but it insisted on me seeing it as two crescents. And I went, okay, I don't know what to make of that. And so anyway, because I wasn't getting any information other than this visual that would not quit. It got cold. I said, okay, I failed. I come inside, and then I get this rush to go make music. And now that I've kind of laid that groundwork, I'll give you the particulars of how this turned out. I'm a musician, and a month or so ago, I had decided I want, as I'm broadening my magical world, the unseen that we communicate with. Okay, we have Mama. All right, there's the main locus, but there's all, there's Dakinis, there's the Muses, there's different infernal type beings like Hecate. And so I come inside, and all I have is, all right, the moon for some reason insisted I see two things, two of itself, and I came inside with this real push from music, and I said, okay, I guess my muse, and in Greek her name is Terpsichore, and the Dakinis that would translate into Bhudevi. So Bhudevi would be my muse, and the Dakini muse. So I come in, and all of a sudden, I'm checking my subscriptions, and there's a brand new John Lash video. And in it, he's talking about the new shift. So this is what really gets interesting. And he really enjoyed it when I gave him, my version, how it went. He went, oh, I wasn't a failure at all. This particular moon cycle is anomalous in that instead of one Dakini on shift, it has two Dakinis on shift. That's why the moon was telling me two. That, it was, I didn't get any language, but it was telling me two. Now, if I had not gone in ignorant, and I did it on purpose, and I told John I wanted to be ignorant because I wanted anything I had to be fresh and not necessarily from something else I knew. I didn't want any imagination. I wanted transmission. So I'm hearing that, and then I'm also finding out which two came on shift, and the main Dakini is Bhudevi, or my musical muse. And if you recall, as I recounted, when I was leaving my lawn and coming inside, I had this, you must make music. I mean, it was like almost going to be an obsession. My muse was telling me, Okay, I'm with you. Now, you know, pick up something and we can get some work done. Sounds like people are coming home, which means that there might be more sound on my mic than just the gentle droning of the digital tambour. Anyway, so, and then the other Dakini with her is Green Tara, and who cares about the green things in the world. She's also known as the wrathful Green Tara, but the wrath is for people who destroy nature. So basically, so I've kind of now done my first beginning of being in moon timing, being in the lunar cycles of the moods of the mother, of Sophia, of Gaia. And with that, it brings me more into that world, into a world that is a world that Gaia supports, as opposed to what we currently have. And I think part of my cage getting so rattled the past couple of days is this is such a beautiful, powerful, clean, coherent world. And then I'll watch the dialogue in live chats, and it's like, what the fuck is that? What is that? Lots of questions, lots of comments too, but I don't know if you're. I don't even know the language. I want to kind of stay in a language that keeps everybody with me here. Hello, Mari. I think that's. Did I miss it? So let me see. Okay, I gotta have a few. I can take a break, and I actually need to kind of reshuffle and ground, because I'm getting a little out there recalling this stuff. And now I see that the camera is way high. I can readjust it. I just noticed that you can see the bat. The bat is a totem of mine, by the way. And I use bat medicine in a lot of ways. In the medicine cards, it means shamanic rebirth. So there's a very shamanic energy to the bat. Also, bats, when they're not flying, spend a lot of their time upside down. So, and in many ways, when I'm in the world that is forming right now, that is starting to get some coherence, at least in the inner part of it. And then I come out of that beauty into the world, I might as well be a fucking bat hanging upside down, because that's what the world that the majority of people are participating looks like to me. At the minimum, if not upside down, let's just say a kind of a very different view. Anyway, I want to catch up on my hellos. So, Foxadre, welcome. Oceanside Zero, welcome. And Metal Lady Benz, Foxadre. Thanks for sharing, Mari. And one of the things I didn't do, I mean, getting this together, I mean, the biggest thing for me, I almost swept the kitchen floor because I wanted something that just, I don't know, made sense. looked at Zero Hedge, you know, catch up with the world, had gone to my forums and see what new rabbit hole um, people are looking down. And one reason I wanted to sweep the floor is I needed to do productive because I felt like I really needed to cry. I mean, the confusion, the how lost, and you're really lost when you don't know you're lost. That's you can't get more lost than not knowing one is lost. And I really said, boy, if I could be just a little more miserable, I could break down in sobbing, heaving, crying session. But it's getting very close to, hello Sandy, getting very close to showtime. I'm not quite sure if I had done that. I'm not sure I would have been done, and I know I would have looked terrible. But it wasn't quite there. And that's when I thought about sweeping the floor. Anyway, and I even forgot to roll a cigarette. And, but, so the two Dakinis on shift right now are Bhudevi in her Tibetan Buddhist name, who kind of corresponds to, who is in many ways Terpsichore. She's the musical muse. Oh, let me get my notes out. I actually have notes. Because last night I was, when I was done looking and what other people were looking at, and I got into my own place. I got into a place of great beauty and clarity, because that is the world that Sophia offers us. She offers a world based in wisdom. And when I can, and it's very easy to access, but there's this other world, and I'm supposed to participate in, and it's just such a heartbreaker. It really is. It's heartbreaking. So Bhudevi, well, the interesting thing was it was tying in with, oh boy, let me kind of get myself together. Let me roll a cigarette, and then I'll retake this. I want to dialogue maybe a little bit into the chat ground with the beautiful people here, and really, and I want to welcome the people who I'm seeing for the first time, people I've known for months, and I want to thank the other people who are doing planetary tantra, for how kind you have been in the chat with people, and addressing the questions that ordinarily I would be alone to do, as far as planetary tantra. And the beautiful thing is, I see it in the comments when I go and I look at the comments. People are not talking to each other, but they're all on the same page, because they're with Sophia. And once you're with her, you get the same news flashes. That would be NOUS. So when you're tuned into the same news, well, then you're taught, we're coming from the same place. And the interesting thing is how this happens without any communication between ourselves. So I'm really enjoying the mix. I've just seen compassion, and friendship, and everybody is mixing beautifully. I'm going to light up my cigarette, and I'm going to smoke shamelessly on camera. I took two skull cap just before I went online, and they'll be kicking in shortly, and that'll calm my nerves down a little bit. Hello, Deborah. Oh, I'm still warming up. The people who I kind of recognize as planetary tantra people, I guess, would be Foxadre, Madfinger, and I believe Metal Lady Benz. Ocean Size, I haven't, and I'm not sure about Nathaniel. I think Nathaniel Lowe, but I know Foxadre, Madfinger, and Metal Lady Benz. I'm pretty much sure of people. I know Foxadre and Madfinger are people I see all the time, either on Ginny or Mandela Effect, John Lash's channel. And I've been watching some of John's older videos. Matter of fact, I listened to one last night. It was a little over 2 years old. It was called Out of Time. And it's interesting to go and see that he put up some videos, sometimes 2, and one was even 3 years ago. And the bulk of the comments were from 3 years ago. Just in the past couple of months, people are finding it, and when they're finding it, they're going, "Thank you, John. I was lost, this is what I needed. I never heard this before, and I listened to this for the first time, and for the first time, things are starting to make sense for me." And that's why last week I had one of this, things in my title was the Gnostic Rising. There is a rising up of consciousness, and I guess people are having coincidences and finding John Lash and listening for the first time and then going, "This is where I need to be. I'm home. Now I can begin. Now that I know where home is, now I can start asking the questions that help me navigate here." You kind of need to know where you're going to ask the questions that'll get you where you want to go. Many questions I see are, if I ask another question, maybe I'll know where I want to go. Which is, that would make for an interesting journey if one was in a car. And a lot of gas. A lot of gas. And what is great about listening to some of John's older videos is perspective. Seeing how the mythophrenia is quite a beast to handle. I'm going to guess there's at least a few people in here who've had a spontaneous Kundalini rising. I had mine in 1988. It was about 2 weeks of bliss and psychosis. I mean, what I mean by psychosis is, in many ways, I was nuts. I wasn't dangerous, but boy, I was nuts. And John has been, in many ways, holding a form of that state now for some years, which he then created the term for that state of mythophrenia. Very appropriate term. And the interesting thing, as you get your packages and you get, his big term was the fallen goddess scenario, or the hidden treasure. But he, in these older videos, he had one, there was one video, I can't quite remember the name, he's going, "Okay, I delivered this stuff, and although at the core it's good, but my syntax didn't work, my explanations were rough and shoddy." And basically, he's kind of owning what things like where Rox and I will do when we're kind of having, two shamanic people sharing packages, and how you have to unpack them, and they unpack over time, and especially new stuff. And there is some assembly required. And when you get the new stuff, it doesn't come with directions. The package comes, but it's part of, your mission is to play with it, and put it together properly. But John is in a place where not only is he receiving the stuff, but people actually are, please, John, put out some more. So he'll give, he puts out, not, I won't call it raw intel, but he puts it out while it's still being unpacked, and then he'll revisit it. The honesty and admitting this was wrong, correct myself here, and that's is beautiful. There's no thing of like, oh, if I admit I'm wrong, I might not look like a teacher. Those of us who know what it is to do shamanic journeying, and of course, being a Gnostic shaman is different than being community shaman. It's two different terminologies. Although the Gnostic, the Terton is in many ways. I don't want to get into too many terms here. I want to keep it conversant. But imagine that part of what one's mission is to maintain a state where you can get those downloads. And I know I shared last week that in preparation for my first Skype meeting with John, I had gone into a deep meditation and communication and wanted help with how to be effective. And instead of me getting information about myself, I got taken on a view, like pictures were delivered to me of who John is, what he's doing, and in many ways, our mother indicating to me who he is, what he is. And certainly one of the things that he is not is full of shit. He is as on it as anybody doing this kind of work could be. And I can see sometimes why he might have occasionally a little bit of an edge, but once he edges, then he comes back and he goes, yeah, I know how that sounded. It's like that real self-awareness. And one of the things that unfortunately, I have another person close to me who's also carrying quite a load for other people, and that's our own brother, Broster, Raksha. And also, what was interesting about the video Let's Do Out of Time was that John was living, kind of getting all this stuff, and then having almost nobody to unpack it with, or he'd have to wait for those moments. And to imagine somebody getting this kind of stuff and then having to do that alone, ouch. So boy, do I have big compassion and just love for John and for Moose. Because I can speak to Moose and I can be somebody who can do some deep sharing and some journeying in journeying almost like through our language in a way. thank you, Fox Dre, for your commentary. This is all very beautiful, and I appreciate it greatly. It's not, you can't really speak about the burden you carry because you've accepted it, and then if you even peep about the burden, you kind of, it's like, hey man, it's like complaining about what you're basically signed up to do. You're kind of self-selected. Mama selects you too, and you got a gig. And there'll be times where the lights don't work. I mean, I'm going to talk as a musician. Sometimes, lighting is rough, sound is rough, the crowd is rough. There's all kinds of things that go with the gig, but it's your gig. You self-selected. You are selected by Sophia and or a mother, if we want to be just to be more broad. But I'd like to think, you're selected by wisdom, which is what Sophia means. Yeah, I like what Madfinger said. For an arrogant guy, JLL is wonderfully humble. A big part of what makes John sound arrogant is because he has to make certain statements that sound like, oh man, do we think enough of ourselves? What he selected to be, and as he was selected, is, if he doesn't say that, he's being irresponsible, but in saying it, he knows he's going to sound arrogant. I mean, he's in a rough situation, and I think he's doing it with considerable grace given. I mean, trying to do ballet while carrying a boulder on your shoulders will maybe not be the most graceful ballet, but all things considered, there's considerable grace there. So I'm going to put out I know for many people the question I'm going to ask, because it's my first time. I started on the 17th. All right, I've been aware of it. I finally got my butt out there and did it, and I will be doing it every month because the rewards are enormous. It allows me to understand each lunar cycle. As Mama brings her various Dakinis on to work with us. And also we in our little humble community here, the shows that we're doing, the shows Raksha does, Mystic in the Moose and Dangerous Discussions, okay? 2 of the shows that we have in our community are completely timed around the moon. Raksha and I do Mystic and Moose around new moon, and Dangerous Discussions around the full moon. And then according to what day of the week and other things, that adjusts it. But the dating of it, the timing of it, is what's happening in our sky. And so there is a beautiful confluence of coherence, earth magic, and earth magic includes the moon. The moon is one of the bigger parts of earth magic. So, one of the, the question I'm going to ask anybody who did go out for this cycling and go out there, first of all, let me ask, did anybody who might, and I mean this might be 2 or 3 people, did anybody go out and tune in, basically do some planetary tantra with the Dakinis? I'm going to wait for that while I try to get some of this nicotine in my system, because I actually have to smoke the cigarette to get it in there. Middle Lady Ben says being here is lovely. The experience is the same for me. I mean, just getting. I was in fairly bad shape at the beginning of this, and I have been getting into better and better shape by being with all you lovely people. Hello, CW. So, Foxa J, did you receive anything? You know, like I got the 2, which I didn't know what it meant. Hello, Seven Serpents. Thank you for joining us. Foxa J, did you get anything? Like I said, I the moon insisted that there was 2 things there. I didn't realize that it was telling me that there's 2 Dakinis on shift, and then Budevi, who is my musical muse, was telling me to go inside and make some music. So that's what I got. Thank you, CW. Hello, Fractal Truth. So I'm just gonna kind of, I wrote down some talking points. I'm just gonna, first of all, just kind of read what I wrote myself, and then I'm gonna expand on them. Okay, participation trophies, as opposed to the pass-fail system. Dakinis moon timing. Emotional immune system, same basis as the physical immune system. A healthy one is based on self-validation, which is a form of self-love. And I guess I want to talk a little bit about the broad topic of paganism and how maligned it is, how misunderstood it is, how much of what we know about the pagans was told to us by the ones who exterminated them. Which is, one has to then consider the source. Yeah, I thought the emotional immune system might be an interesting place to go. Because the emotional immune system, kind of like the physical, just the way a good physical immune system will blow off viruses and stuff like that, or you know, it's like, oh yeah, so I got a little sniff, it'll be gone tomorrow. The emotional immune, that's how the physical immune system works. The emotional immune system is kind of similar, where incoming, like maybe harsh comments, or somebody says something that could create almost distress and butthurt for some people. For other people, it's like, okay, that's what you feel, fine. In other words, it doesn't take hold. So just as you might be, if you have a good immune system, you're exposed to a virus, it really doesn't take over. Similarly, if you have a good emotional immune system, even the worst insults are like, oh well, whatever. There's no real distress. In other words, you resist it. You don't take it on. But the strength for them, the key part of any of our immune system is about self-validation. And I apologize for the home theater system that some people require to get the most out of TV. So, then I'm okay. So that's there isn't a whole. I mean, the emotional immune system, like any, is about getting into your heart, and once you're there, you can be spoken to by the wisdom goddess herself, or in some form of communication. Actually, that's a really good thing for me to tie into. My very first video on this channel, ModWiz125, is Paradigm Disruption. Gaia Sophia is our God. And of course, I have certain people take me to task because I didn't say goddess, but when we refer to male and female deities as a group, we call them gods. When we talk about that space in us that we talk to and we, usually look for direction from, that's kind of like the God space. So basically that God space is in my gnosis is properly filled with Sophia. So that's why I said Gaia Sophia is our God. Hello, Doc. How are you? So I don't know if it was before I made that video or after, but I had, done some connection and wasn't getting like spoken to like I'm used to, because this is when I'm really, it's like we're gonna get this channel open and work it. Then I get, it could be whether it was some other agent or my higher self basically said, I have a recording from Mother. It was like a voicemail, so to speak. And it was telling me that direct communication with her would destabilize me. And having had my Kundalini experience and know what that was, and that was hardly a connection with the living planet, I understood completely. It was, in other words, out of her love. It was a direct communication. It was verbatim. It was a communication from her, but one degree of separation. Okay, I'm going to turn on the overhead fan because I turned up my heat a little earlier, and hope I didn't burn my thing here. And it's gotten a little stuffy. So that was very interesting. That whole thing that to be that close would kind of blow me up. I think it's time for me to stop looking at the chat for a moment. I'll be back to the chat, but I need to stay on course and not be distracted. At least not yet. Distractions are nice, but not while I'm trying to get something out. And I would say much of my emotional immune system has been through having that God space properly filled and the validation that comes from that connection. But you can have self-love without, and still not be doing planetary tantra. Now, pagan, one of the people I like to hear at least cleaning up some of the history about the pagans, is Thomas Sheridan. I love that Irishman. I love his spirit. I love the fact that he goes outside and makes many of his videos in that little hut he built or out in nature. And that's now that we're getting warmer. And I do have a smartphone. I don't have it hooked up into the internet. I use the alarm, I use the camera, but I will not turn my smartphone on to the internet. When I'm, the internet is when I'm in my room and not in nature, and also when I leave the internet, I'm leaving that for a while. I really don't want the internet with me in nature. And so, but I do want to, but I can record. I can, it's, you can make you can make movies with it. So it's, it's kind of like a video camera. So what I am looking forward to doing is doing some things outside, like especially when the first lilacs come up, go out there and, take pictures of them while I smell them, pictures of the roses that I'm awaiting. I have a friend of mine who has a very nice, quiet property that I wouldn't mind just sitting in and doing some sharing. And I haven't done the full iron to iron ritual. To Guy, I've done iron to iron, but I wasn't as formal, and I want to try the formal version just in case there's an amping up of communication. And ideally, apparently, the mother likes us to have a witness. And so what I was thinking is, I don't know anybody really to partake of that. So I was thinking about recording my cutting my finger, putting it to the ground, and stating my vow, and then sharing it on a live stream. I'm not going to put it out on a video. But those who come to the live stream that that this is kind of a little bit of a sacred space, you will be my witnesses. And then of course it'll go out, but I mean most of my videos don't get, and I won't put it in the title. In other words, it'll be in there, but I'm not going to make any kind of show of it. Witnessing is not a show. Okay, I'll come into the chat again just to, because I kind of got, at each little pause, I want to get into the chat. Hello, Deborah. Yeah, I know solo was fine, but I just had the idea of that there's a fair amount of intimacy in the live, and with the live streams, and so I just thought it might be appropriate. Like I said, especially, and I think I would do it later in the stream, because very often these are 2 hours, and probably a lot of people don't get to the end. So if I put it towards the end, then probably the main people I'm sharing it with are the people who are live on the live stream, and that to me makes it proper. I hear you, Fox. Fox Dre. This is why sharing ideas in sacred space is helpful. Oh, the cigarette is good. Oh, let me mute my mic for a second. I'm back. I'm back. So, the pagans. Here's an interesting thing about pagans. It's actually what the word means. It's at least the word pagan is derivative of the Latin word pagani, which means a rustic, people out people out in nature. The polytheists in Rome, who the monotheists called pagans, weren't pagans. It was the polytheists calling those who were kind of doing earth magic and corresponding with the original nature spirits, the non-archontic spirits, that the polytheists were calling pagani. And then when we get into the Anglo-Saxon word heathen, we're again talking about rustics out in the heath. So the pagan what the word pagan is, nature worshippers or nature lovers, people who do their magic and their work with nature oriented, capital N, deiforms. And much of that was elementals, devas, nature spirits. Spirits of a stream, wells. And there are devas of wells, there are devas of streams and springs. I mean, there are guardians, attendants, and we could call them etheric groundskeepers. And these are largely the day-to-day beings that the pagani were communing and working with. When you go into the cities, where we had civilization, then we have the official gods, and so if we're, in the Roman sense, it would be, the planet names: Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and those. And in Greek, you'd have, the Hermes and Zeus and Aphrodite, Ares. But those were the state religions. And this is where, that's where actually, let me have a little more I say, because I do have some writing on that. The interesting thing about the Greek state religions is how in Greek mythology, you have a mix of the archontic state religion with the rustic nature spirits that go in there, and that's why especially in the Greek, you have this endless amounts of what would be like beings under the official gods. And since the Romans were nothing more than a complete theft of what the Greeks had, then we just see more duplication, because that's what the archons do. They mimic and duplicate. That's all they can do. They don't have any creativity. So, and the interesting thing, in many ways, is where amongst the Pagani, amongst the people who were in nature, there were no necessarily official priest class or priestess class. Everybody was free to do what they could, and then there were people who were more skilled, like an equivalent of shamans, people who like almost could barely live in our world. They were so in that world, and they would be recognized for who they were. Where once you get into the state religions of the Romans and the Greeks, you have a priest and priestess class, and they were the ones who were the officiators of magic. And then you see that come into the monotheistic systems, where first of all, where magic was forbidden to the common folk, and all magic was the province of the priest class. Because in a monotheism, there is no priestesses, there's only priests. Because Yahweh never got laid, and he was pretty pissy about it. So it's interesting to kind of see how as we move forward into his story and leave our story, we see little by little where the magic that we all had and shared, each to their skill. Indeed, who would want to lay Yaldi? And you have to wonder if he and the archons, well, whatever. So you see this development of a complete connection to Mother Earth, to Mother Nature, with the people who lived in nature and knew nature personally, and then the formation of the archontic polytheistic system, where the myriad beings get kind of shortened down to kind of 7s and 12s, and then following on, I mean, Imperial Rome in many ways, you went from polytheistic to monotheistic with a signing of a piece of paper, because that's how the archons work. They work with paper. And in many ways, many of the priests, because there were priests and priestesses, many of the priests, like, that were like, a priest of Jupiter on Wednesday became priests of the Catholic priests on Friday. And that's how it went. And then they were given their new set of instructions, because that's also how these systems work. There's a word, it's a Greek word called tekton, and it means one who is skilled at something. The interesting thing is that the Gospels that are written in the Gospels that are written in Greek that we read in English that say Jesus was a carpenter, they didn't use the word carpenter, they used the word tekton. So, in many ways, and whoever the mythos of Jesus, what they're saying is that he was a tekton, he had a skill, and apparently they were saying his skill was with wood. And that was, and so the ancient world had part of the, the lesser and greater mysteries. The lesser mysteries were the developments of tectons of various skills: masons, woodworkers, herbs, astronomy. And I would love to return to where we had skills that allowed us to be useful and to each other, and not jobs. Read the book of Job or Job. And then my other thing is the participation trophy world. And it was interesting, what triggered me to pick that topic was because there was somebody on the forum. Apparently the One Truth forum is, I guess, just short of, I don't know, 1,400 members. And somebody's going, when are we going to hit 1,400? Somebody has, I guess the number means something to them. And so they're just, they're quite excited that we're almost at 1,400. And the administrator, who is the one who kind of clears the members, makes sure that they're not bots, and that they have a real email address. He says how many of them, they sign up. He said there's so many people, dozens of people, who will sign up for the forum, and all they have to really do is, click on the email to confirm it. Well, apparently the instant gratification, like in other words, they might see like, oh, I want to say something in that post, so I got to join. Let me join, and then they find out that they might have to wait a day before they can have the instant gratification of replying to someone, and they don't return. And in other words, they don't complete the participate. They want to participate, but there's a completion to it. There isn't like, oh, I want to participate, fine, you're in. To me, that's part of the participation trophy mentality. Where if a little work is involved in getting what you might view as a trophy, a lot of people tune out. It's a little too much. Good night, Metal Lady Benz. So those were the kind of the things that had occurred to me to use as some topics. But I'm really loving riding this current cycle with the Bhudevi, who is the muse I chose a couple of months ago. The muse, in the Greek, as Terpsichore, she's music. As Bhudevi, she's associated with abundance, ecology, and aesthetics. Music is aesthetics, so that would be proportions. And then the Dakini that she shares. This is the only time there's two Dakinis. Is this one when the crescent moon is in Taurus, and that's green Tara. And green Tara is in many ways could almost be like a unique aspect of Mother Nature. Okay, I mean, almost like if you could picture a Mother Nature, that would be, in a smaller, like, again, the concern is about the greening. Apparently she came about when at the end, being perceived as bringing the green to a post-glacial world. And that as the green started showing up, that was the green Tara. Manifesting. Now, my own kind of little mythic tie-in with the Valar of the Tolkien mythos. Radagast had all of the Istari, or those who know. That's what the Istari means. Those who know, and the Istari was the word, the Elven word for wizards. And the wizards had tutors amongst the Valar, which in many ways were kind of aeonic in this particular mythos. The tutor of Radagast was Yavanna. And Yavanna was the one who cared for the animals and the green things. And it was her concern that on Middle-earth, men would have too little respect for the green things and the animals. She was concerned about, forests disappearing for man. Yes, wrathful green Tara, indeed. But that needs to be unpacked. The wrathful green Tara is wrathful to those who would threaten the green things and the natural order. Her wrath is those who would bring a world and do things that would disrupt and disrespect and destroy the natural order. Those who do that earn her wrath. And so for myself, having chosen Budevi as the music muse through Terpsichore. First, I did it through the Greek way. Then I found out which of the Dakinis correspond to Terpsichore. Turns out it's Budevi. And then I find out Budevi, as far as a lunar cycle, is tied in with the green Tara, who is in many ways an analog, although an analog of a fiction, of Yavanna. And my name is Radagast, who was tutored by Yavanna in the fiction. And if that isn't a whole bunch of coinky dinkies, I don't know what is. It's interesting things. Occasionally I see things that are clearly questions. They have question marks, but I'm assuming that when I see questions in the chat, they're directed to other people in the chat. So I don't address them unless they're directed at me. So I'm not ignoring any questions. I'm just assuming they're not directed to me. Lee made an interesting comment. He says, "It's not easy understanding others' gnosis. You have helped in different ways. For that I am grateful." And that's very gracious of you to say. One of the things that I'm appreciating is when I, in this chat here and reading the comments by people like Foxadre and Mad Illusion, it's very obvious to me we're sharing basically the same broad gnosis. When we get into the intricacies of personal gnosis, it becomes individual, just like our personalities. But in the broader, like living in the same world, like being on the same field, it's very interesting that those doing planetary tantra have the same gnosis. It's not like everybody has their own gnosis. There is a kind of a central gnosis attached to the Sophianic mythos, the Sophianic narrative. And that is, it really is amazing that to see people who I've never had a conversation with, and it's not, and you can tell it's coming from the inside, not from the outside, and how that same inner response is letting, I know from me looking out at other people, I'm seeing people and I'm like, wow, yeah, that's the confirmation that this isn't imagination, and it's certainly not false imagination, which is fantasy. I would define fantasy as using the imagination to create an inner world that suits the emotions, that makes people feel good. Unless you have dark fantasies. But fantasy is, to me, emotional-based use of our imaginative capacity given to us by our mother and by the originators. I mean, it's, we cannot drop out the originator, who is the source of all, but we have a local source, and seriously potent and conversant. Oh boy. So it's really interesting. I went to, I checked to see how views are doing on the videos in my video manager. And I'm like, where did the last one go? And they took the last one and put it behind the one I had put out a day or two before. They took in other words, if you at least, now if I click on them and I go to the videos themselves, they have the real dates. But in my video manager, they have me doing a live stream on the 2nd and the 1st. Okay, so like there's one Can't You Hear Me Gnostic for April 1, another Can't You Hear Me Gnostic for April 2, and I do them a week apart, not 2 days, so I don't know what is going on there. They also took last week's one that was done on the 16th, and now they're saying it was done on the 11th. So but Raksha told me that things are a little bit goofy. Hello, Christian Martin. And Etheric Essentials by Deborah Tucker. So I guess we should call you Deborah. Seven Serpents did a live stream that he had put up walking down a trail that I really enjoyed. I like that tree down. That tree was pretty neat. So I guess I should announce that actually I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. In many ways, I try to keep myself up as late as possible and then sleep as little as possible because I want to be tired, because I have to get up early tomorrow, because at 1 o'clock my time, I'm kind of doing a test run with John. And if things go well, we're going to do about a 50-minute show together. So I want to get a really good night's sleep and then get up, because 1 o'clock in the afternoon is actually a little early for me when you fall asleep at 9 o'clock in the morning. Very often, somewhere between I'm getting to bed around 6, and because when I was between my meditations and stuff, I kind of give myself about an hour to fall asleep. And a lot of times I'm just there on the end, and then my roommate works from 11 to 7, so he pulls in at 7, and then the TV goes on. And so if I'm like there, like in my little twilight, and all of a sudden the TV comes on, and there's a subwoofer, and there's a tower right outside my bedroom door. And then it, you know, so there's the shock of that. There's the what certainly seems to be lack of mindfulness, we'll just say. And that just kind of rattles me, and very often just so now I'm awake. So let's get up and have a smoke and see if we can't just get a little bit mellow. And so then sometimes I don't fall asleep at 10 o'clock when I was just getting ready to fall asleep at 7. So I'm trying to get myself so if I get to bed maybe an hour earlier, when I'm falling asleep around 6, there'll be no, you know, there won't be that TV coming on. And once my sleep chemicals kick in, I mean, you know, you could pick up the house and put it on a truck, and as long as I'm concerned, can I sleep? I'll go back to sleep. Well, thank you very much for those who are wishing me well. I think it will go well. I know that I don't know, I guess we spoke 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour on Skype. And it went well. We had some chuckles. I shared my you know, Dakini coming on shift experience with him. It was like, okay, teacher, I'm the student. Here are my results. I think, at first I thought I had an F, but once I heard you and I realized I did get some confirmations, I think I'd give myself a D. And he was like, nah, you did better than that. Because he was funny. He was like, you're being hard on yourself there. And that is, actually, I am my own worst critic, and I like it that way. It's one of the reasons I'm a good musician. It's one of the reasons I have a good vocabulary, because I give a shit about myself, and that I don't hold myself in any kind of false light. And if there's always a tendency to false light, but I'd rather think a little less of myself than more. It's a little, to me, it's a little closer to the truth and much easier to adjust. It's much more emotionally satisfying to lift oneself up for correction than have to bring oneself down. Although getting it correct, whether one is more pleasant than the other, the greatest pleasure comes from kind of getting yourself configured correctly. So again, I see questions there, and I'm assuming that they're directed to you. You know, you're having inter-chat dialogues, and they're not directed towards me. People might know that I play with Butch Robbins in a band called Uncle Butchie, and it's interesting. One of the things that I was directed to do, I was instructed to do, because the Dakinis give you instruction. And so when I was instructed to go in and do some music, the main thing was actually I had a recording of a rehearsal that I had a recording of rehearsal I hadn't listened to. We had another rehearsal that I had pulled 2 songs up, and that computer's up there. It's Uncle Butchie. It's Salt Creek and 40 Years Late. So I said, okay, you know, and these are rehearsals, and this is when the drummer hadn't been with us that long. He's still breaking in. So, you know, that can set up some kind of rhythmic cafunkeries. And so it was kind of like, yeah, you know, it was like make music, but I really got direction was that, you know, because there's also about art and aesthetics there, and producing art, not just like go play your guitar, like, you know, get something out there so that others can share with you, because we need to share. So I finally got around to opening up that recording, and I had, at the time, I had a little Tascam. I still have it. It doesn't work anymore because it dropped on the floor and no longer works. But I had already downloaded it from the memory card. I'm giving it a listen, and unfortunately, I had it was apparently I had set it in a place because it has internal mics. You know, it's just like set it down, hit record, and you record. And the bass was so overpowering, and it was distorting. You know, it was kind of like, you know, it wasn't just that it was loud; it was an ugly sound. And on the low notes, the higher notes were okay, but when I was hitting low notes, and I play, you know, I'm a bass player, so I'm hitting a lot of low notes. Although I do go into cello range sometimes, and they were just farting out, so to speak. And I went like, "There's no," and so I took it and I put it into 2 different kinds of sound editors, and no matter how much I turned down on the equalizer, brought the bass down, the signal was too hot. The original signal came in distorted, and there was no way of getting the distortion out of the sound. So I figured, you know, we have like 30 or more songs we do per rehearsal. I figured, just like with the other one, I managed to pull 2 really pretty songs in pretty good shape out of there. And I did, once I heard I clicked through it, and everywhere, you know, every time I hit certain registers, which is very often, it was just blatting out. So I wasn't able to do that. And originally, I had intentions to get up and kind of, just like I did the song preview of the Goob song a week or so ago, I have this other song called "I'm Tired" that is got real bite to it. And I figured, if I get enough words, I would do that. But then, you know, I get up and I'm drinking my coffee, and besides the pathos that just put me in a tailspin, I also had all kinds of people. Somebody wanted me to call them. My phone almost never rings. While I'm calling them, I get somebody else is trying to call me. I almost never have that happen. I had another person who wanted to talk to me about music publishing regarding my music. And so it was just like I had all these things coming at me, and I never got around to writing at least a verse or 2 so that I could do it. So unfortunately, I don't have another song preview for tonight. Okay, so I'm going to try to catch up with the chat a little bit. It's kind of moving along. Please don't take my quiet as, you know, thinking that the gift of gab has suddenly deserted me. So it says, I see, sorry, I should have tagged, my bad. Does that mean that there was a question? If there was, then please retag it and ask it. Unless I can, you know, because have I learned to drop a link in live? I don't even know what that means. So I guess not. That would be the answer, no. And, yeah, I don't know quite what that means. Who's Corey Good? That's how, I mean, there are certain people now that are just such a freak show that my whole thing is, who? David who? Corey who? I'm actually a bass player. I'm a bass player who started on guitar. I started guitar at 12. Picked up the bass at 16 and barely put it down. I still love the guitar. I actually have more 6 strings than I have 4 strings. Although I do have 3, you know, bass guitars. I had 4. I had a little Gretsch guitar, and I loved it because I had a nice 3/4 neck. But my old drummer, who didn't have a bass, and you know, as a drummer, he had some pretty good bass skills. I gave it to him, although I told his girlfriend, who's my an ex-wife of mine, that I lent it to him because if she knew that he owned it, she'd probably want him to sell it because she's always needing money. So I kind of said, okay, to him I said, you and I know I'm giving you this equipment, but we tell her that I lent it to you. This way here, you can keep it. But he, what's good is because, you know, he's a drummer, and the 3/4 neck makes it a lot easier to play. I have this, like, this is my main bass. I love this bass. Actually, I'm going to put on my live thing so I can see what I'm doing here. There we go. So this is my Ibanez bass. Yeah. Oh yeah. Let me just kind of get this strap straightened out. Yeah. This strap I've had, since like 1980. I had another one and I gave it to the lead singer at the time, but see, it's got that nice star on it. So anyway, this is my main bass. It's got two beautiful Bartolinis here, but as you can see, it's a very long neck. The other one had a neck that probably would have ended here, and this one's still got more. But fortunately, I have pretty long fingers, so it's not, for me it's not a big deal. But this is my instrument. But when it comes to guitars, this is my Telly, American Standard Telly. I love it. This is a really sweet guitar, and I like the rosewood fretboards. Very often Tellys have maples, but I like maple as the body. But I think it might be an alder body, but I like the rosewood. I like the look, and I also just, like the sound. And the maple necks also get stained from everything. You don't see the stains on this. And then I also have my Washburn. It was a birthday gift from many years ago from wife number 3 before she hooked up with that one. And it needs tuning. And I have another guitar in the corner, but I won't dig it out. So let me get back to the chat. Which are you speaking about, Christian? The Telly or the Ibanez? The bass is an Ibanez. I have a fretless Ibanez bass, but it has EMG pickups, and compared to the Bartolinis on this one, these pickups are great. The EMGs I'm not very impressed with them. And I can, I noodle around on keyboards. I have a little Yamaha keyboard that, and what's nice is even though Yamaha was the company that invented the best, electronic keyboard that really sounds like a Grand, so they kind of own that. And so even when you buy like their $125, plastic keyboard, weighs a couple of pounds, the software in it is their grand piano sound. Thank you, Christian. Yeah, I love that bass. Yeah, it's really sweet. And I forgot what I was talking about because I got involved there. I guess what is, I'm sitting here looking at some of the names. It's like Corey Who is with somebody I never heard of, which is apparently Gerald McDonald. It's like, I don't think these people are talking about Gnosis. So, they're not in my world, really. being clueless in creation is not something I'm in the pursuit of. I was like, I spent a lot of my life like that. And once you get cute, once you are no longer clueless, you can tell who doesn't have a clue. Or maybe their main clue is, oh, there are a lot of people who will believe absolutely anything I tell them. And I mean, I really feel that part of David Wilcox, when he was doing like the wisdom teachings, he was a good aggregator. And in his aggregation, he also connected some dots. So I believe before he hooked up with Corey Goode, his books were, things you could learn. You could learn some stuff from. His 2012 prediction was crazy. That's, something, that is something to mention with regards to Planetary Tantra and John Lamb Lash. When all of the scuttlebutt, including the butt gas coming out of David Wilcox around 2012 was going on, I mean, every, ascension, whatever the scenario was, all the bullshit. The only person that was navigating us with great care was John Lash. That was during Sophia's reset, going into correction in 2014. And the whole Gaia navigation experiment, the hundreds of people who were part of that, went through that with grace, dignity. There was not much dignity in the 2012 stuff. And it was very much what we expected. And that was a very crucial time, at a time when, there was, great fervor. Justifiably so. It was a very important time. It's because the Earth was kind of coming out of the basic dustiness of the Kenoma, or the galactic arms, and got it up enough that there was like almost a direct line of sight from our third band to the galactic center, which enabled her to reconnect to her home, where we all started. And that was a powerful moment for her, and that engagement, that reconnection, enabled her, for her in September of 2014, to begin correction. So anyway, David Wilcock, or we'll talk about his cock, was not a joke when he was an aggregator, researcher, and then putting together books with some of his own insight. He was a fairly respectable fellow. 212 was a bad call for him, and he lost a lot of cred, and for good reason. He misled people. He set himself up as a leader, and he was a good writer. He was doing something, and then he stepped into something that he was clueless in creation about, and he ended up with egg on his face. So in many ways, his remake of himself is to be Corey Goode's handler. And so there's that clown show going on now. And David is Dave has a fair amount of intelligence. And when I hear some of the stuff that he says, I don't believe that he believes it. And I think that there's actually kind of something really not very pleasant happening in David, that he's saying things that basically nobody with a fair amount of intellect and it isn't an emotional wreck would believe. But he sees that he's got thousands of people clamoring for the next goldfish feeding. And I think he actually has no respect for the people who pay his bills. Zero respect. I mean, because he's got enough intelligence to know I'm talking complete stupid shit here, and these people are eating it up. Well, you know what? If they're that fucking stupid, they deserve it, and I'll bank on it. And that's what I think about him. Yeah. Corey's damaged. Corey's just damaged. So I kind of went through that with David, because to just say David is a joke, being as I have been, I've known, I remember I was on Project Avalon at the time when David was in that live stream or something with Kerry Cassidy, and then somebody called him up and threatened him, and the big joke was he wet his pants. I was able to listen to it as it was happening live, and there were people who couldn't make the connection. I was doing a post into Project Avalon forum with a synopsis, like almost by minute. Like, in other words, for those who couldn't hear it, I was giving the synopsis. I was that involved with things. And then I didn't fit in with Project Avalon, largely because the man who's there is. I'm one of those people who thinks you're kind of known by the company you keep. I needed to clean up. I mean, yeah, they hopefully will. Ginny and John are outing clowns. I mean, I listened to an older on Gaiaspora.org. I can actually call that up. Hold on, give me a second. Let me just, because I can talk here, and then let's get to Gaiaspora. I want to show people a real wealth of information, but it also ties into. It ties into what I thought was really hysterical stuff. Okay, so let me get back into here, and we're going to do browser. We're going to do fit to screen. There we go. I'm going to get my little bit of my personal stuff out of the way, and then we're going to transition. Okay, so here's Gaiaspora, and there are two main things on Gaiaspora. One is. Okay, you have JLL interviews, where he sits down with other people and speaks, and then there's the GNE audio files, and these were the files he sent out to us when we were doing a Gaian navigation experiment. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I mean, there's some mind-blowing and very, very interesting. But this is, this was John speaking to his peeps, where the other one is John speaking to the world, which is a slightly different format. And there was this really interesting lady. What is it in these here? Let's see, ancient wisdom. I'm trying. I mean, I get a little confused about it. Oh, anyway, you can. My whole thing is that these interviews. This is where he's talking to other people. The conversation with Max Egan was really quite good. And I think it was Be Simply. Okay. And this woman, Be Simply, she was very much involved with the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan Lamas. And so, she was, here she is having some, and of course, much of the Dakini stuff is from Tibetan Buddhism, but there's also a form of it that's called Bo, and that's before it became kind of like a religion. The Bo is kind of the folk aspect of Tibetan thought. kind of pre-Buddhism. And so anyway, this woman, really delightful lady, and a woman who she had an emotional immune system. So she's was big. I'm gonna come back on screen. She was big on she entertained. I guess she had like Rinpoches and stuff that she knew personally. And and John just says, you know something? He goes, look, I know the tradition, but the modern system and the Dalai Lama himself, they're just dried up old fucks with no magic. And it was like, yeah, John, tell it like it is. And then he brought about, how he goes, yeah, I got a good example of you. The Dalai Lama went to the White House or the Capitol, somewhere in Washington, to do some kind of ritual. He goes, if he had some magic, he would have burned. He said in these words, if he had some magic, he would have burned the fucking place down. But he didn't. And that's because he couldn't. I mean, when John lets loose, it is so much fun. And he said, I hope, I know this is cutting. She goes, no, John, I am really grateful for your honesty, and I might have to rethink these fellows. Because they are coming up a little, we call them impotent, magically. They're magically impotent, and they are. Because their system no longer really is a magic practice. It's a parasitic. In other words, if you have the honor of a Rinpoche visiting you, well, you better have a pretty good credit card or a cash thing, because they ain't paying for a thing. They don't have any money. They expect you to pay for everything, because they're giving you the honor of their, of having a holy man, and all they have is that veneer, and they got nothing. They got no magic. They got no money. They got nothing. Yeah, because it's a sham. Tibetan Buddhism is, it's a sham, and the Dalai Lama. I mean, one of the funny. Not in his name is it, Oceanside. Start there. That is it. Where's the Tibetan Buddhism? Oh yeah, the Dalai Lama. Now, of course, they're Buddhists, right? Ahimsa, no harm, and so generally, Buddhists tend to be vegetarian, and the Dalai Lama is known to go to these grand, he's a big guy. He gets invited, to sit with Bilderberger type people. And there are enough vegetarians in the world where when they go there, they actually have, just like I've gone to many places, they'll have the main entree and a vegetarian entree. Okay, so the Dalai Lama has a choice of that or the vegetarian. He never eats the vegetarian. He always goes for the meat. Which, for a Buddhist holy man that has an option, and then you look at the choices made, he's a dick. He says good stuff, but personally I think he's a dick. Hello, crazy beautiful. So Oceanside, I would recommend, you have Not in His Name. It's a beautiful read. It's a wonderful read. There is Radio Gaianim, which is now up to number 11, which is really current. So it's kind of, you can read that book and then be kind of in it enough where the current stuff coming out will have, be coherent. And then going to Gaiaspora.org and listening to the many interviews he's done. And they're dated. So you can know whether you're listening to him in 2012 or you're listening to him now in 2018. Now, the the fallen goddess scenario, the terma of Gaia awakening, of the Sophianic narrative, is that part is complete. In other words, that's kind of the ground. That's where it all begins. That's the basic map. And now we're in a place where that map is getting more populated. The map is expanding, and becoming a really, it's becoming a new world. The world that needs to come, because the other world is in the process of destroying itself and the people with it. Oh, I gotta get a little, I feel like I need to get a little adjustment here, if I can. So I'm thinking about, I've done mystic quickies or something like that. I forget what they're called. And I'm thinking about, I've thought that I might occasionally, sometimes I get like this flash, and I might be able to just say something within 5 or 10 minutes. And maybe I'd put out more quickies. And I have a little ditty, little song ditty to put it. I was using the very end of Fleetwood Mac's Big Love, where he and where Lindsay and Stevie are doing that breathing, and I was using that as kind of like, for a quickie. But Fleetwood Mac is definitely one, and those were made a while ago, but Fleetwood Mac is one of the people who really don't like you messing with their copyrights. And so I'm going to do my own. It's going to be based on, I have a little ditty of music that I can be quite humorous, and I can put my own breathing into it. The band I'm with right now, and it's the only, I really love it, is Uncle Butchie with Butch Robbins. Butch Robbins was the banjo player for not the only banjo player, but for years of Bill Monroe. Bill Monroe is the man who created the style that we now call bluegrass. So for me, playing with Butch Robbins is like playing with Eric Clapton, except he's on a banjo. Incredible sense of rhythm. When we play and we're doing things, and the drummer and I have a really good, we're really in the pocket. The way he does rhythmic counterpoints. How he sometimes will play with the timing. He'll get ahead, he'll fall behind to catch up. He's amazing. It's just amazing to play with him. Good night, Mari. Yeah, and Bill Monroe was quite a musician, but I'm a pretty accomplished musician. Theory, I read music when I first started. When I switched to bass, the bass clef, I kind of read the bass clef a little retardedly, but once I learned theory, once you know theory, you know structure, and just enabled me to really be quite a good musician. And I had, I had a reasonably good opinion of myself, and it wasn't a false one. But once I met Butch Robbins, he has a good enough opinion of me to have been playing with me now for 3 years, and he's not looking to replace. He loves playing with me. Matter of fact, I spoke to him just before the show, roughly, and he was talking about all these people who were asking him to play, and he's just like, he doesn't want to tell them, but it's like, I have my own band, and these are the guys these are the men that I enjoy playing with. Good night, CW. My pleasure, Ocean Size. We're all supporting each other. This is a beautiful thing. We need to enter her dreaming. We need to dream together. This is a co-creative. This is a power sharing thing. And but you just you cannot share power with something you're not connected with. Magically impossible. But the main connection is Earth. It doesn't, I mean, let's take somebody, there's a couple of people who are very much with Mama in their own way. But like when Moose and I speak, we're coming basic, when it comes to Earth, and without teachings, just our gnosis, we're there. And that's, he's coming from a Native American tradition, and he's a shaman, so he is connected into that. So the lexicon could be different, but we can, I can use my lexicon, he can use his lexicon, and we are still on the same page. And yeah, her story. Now, what's interesting is, we have a couple songs we play, kind of full speed ahead, and it's quite fun. And they end up being about under 2 minutes, even though we might do the verse and chorus structure 4 times or something like that. Sometimes it's only 3 times, but we're playing it like 140, 160 beats per second, and ooh, baby, does it go. But I actually told him, I said, when I listen to like the real bluegrass, it's just like, it's almost like for me, it's a lot. Sometimes for me, it's just like, calm down a little bit, occasionally, but it's almost like the faster you can play, it's, it's there kind of shredding. Bluegrass is kind of like, country shredding. I haven't heard the name Matt Finger. No, I haven't started YouTube. I put it on here. I have one, if you go back, there's one video up right now, and it has a picture of the band on it, and it's 2 songs. It's Salt Creek, which I'm pretty sure is like kind of a standard, and then there's 40 Years Late, which is a Butch Robbins original. Per minute, AJ. If I said per second, I misspoke. At those, again, a few songs at those speeds are fun, but I want some time to let a note ring and have a little space to play with time. At 160 beats per second, about the only just keeping up with that, it gets really tricky. But again, that is, in many ways, to me, that's mountain music shredding. One of the songs I enjoy playing, it's called, what's the name? It has an, you would never, even though I've been playing the same song with him for 3 years, when he mentions it, I don't connect it. It's the full version of the song that used to be on the Late Show. Dun 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 da 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 da. That one. Used to be for the Late Show. Now, obviously, the Late Show was when I was a kid, so that melody, Little Rock Getaway is the. So when I think of the Late Show and how it was like tick tock, da 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 da, and they would do the song, and and then the actual title is Little Rock Getaway. To this day, he goes, okay, we're going to play Little Rock Getaway. And that's one of the funny things. We have all these songs, and the titles themselves sometimes are like, which one is that? And I have to say, can you like hum the first bar? It's kind of like you need, so sometimes I tell them, you need to open the door. Once you open the door, I know what's in the living room and I can give it to you. I haven't listened. I mean, what I think of Yngwie, I think he's very skilled. One of the things I like playing with Butch is we do our best that the only person who's amplified is me, because I play an electric bass. And the interesting thing is he prefers an electric bass to a stand-up bass, because the electric bass allows a fluidity that he likes. So he plays pretty loud, and he has an old Gibson banjo that I'm not gonna want, the whole thing is, I hate when because this is not a person, I hate when an incredible instrument is often told how incredible it is because it's X amount of thousands of dollars that could be sold for on, like the price for it. And it's just like, that means nothing. What really is how good it sounds. The dollar amount, oh please. I mean, I understand, security, and in our world that means something, but man, it's owning it. It's not, the dollar value to me is like ugly, and actually an ugly way to speak about this beautiful instrument. Anyway, so the banjo's a loud instrument anyway, and Butch's plays pretty loud, so he plays acoustically, and during rehearsal. Our drummer has all kinds of, like little softer sticks, and so he sets the volume, and I'm the only electrified player. And I like that. I like the fact that and the drums are an acoustic instrument. I like acoustic sound. I have nothing against electronics at all. But so much music is only that. And so, for me, I enjoy being part of something that is helping balance the equation. Good night, Lee. And the funniest thing is that both the drummer and Butch are all saying to me, can you turn up a little bit? Can you turn up? They actually like me louder than I like to hear myself. Roy Clark in his heyday was really, really good. Roy, it's like what you see, but here's what, for them, Roy Clark is a really good thing. When he was at his hottest, it was because he practiced, and the amount of practice to be able to go out on a stage and play like that is enormous upkeep. And so if you're willing to do the upkeep, you can play like that. But few people can do the upkeep to keep that level for like a whole career. And that's why, so kind of Roy Clark had his years or whatever of that ability, and then owing to taking a vacation and coming back and not either getting it, the perils of success, which usually involve drugs, any number of things, but that's why a lot of times some people have that moment in the sun, but it's hard to sustain. Well, actually, I just cut it last night. I cut a few inches. I cut off about that much last night. Because it's new moon. It was getting a little raggedy. I needed to stimulate my hair. And then also I got it trimmed about 2 or 3 years ago. It's been growing out since 2010. Because that's when I got sober. Once I got, and I was keeping my hair. I was actually had hair just a little bit longer than George Clooney, because I was, it seemed good for my massage profession rather than going in all wild looking. But then I got a regular gig at Omega where it was okay to be a hippie. And also in 2010, I got sober again. And once I got sober and I came back into my body, and I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, who the fuck is that? Now I don't say that anymore. By the time I was 17, I had hair about this length and kept it for most of my life. The real reason I cut it short was, I guess, shortly after I got married. Also, it seemed like my hair was thinning, and it was thinning. It was adjusting. I mean, I'm 65. I have a picture of myself when I was in my 40s, and it really does look like I have a wig on. My hair was so ridiculously thick, crazy thick. So, so when I adjusted to that crazy thick, I had people go, "Do you wear? I mean, is that a hairpiece?" Even though it was long and lustrous, I mean, it was brown. I had a streak up here that was blondish. I had a blonde streak all my life. They were right in the center of my head, and that was the one that turned gray of ultra, and then the gray started spreading. And so when my hair was thinning, I said, "Oh, maybe I decided to trim it," and not to mention huge amounts of hair were coming out, and but after I wore it short for a while, I went, okay. We've adjusted. We've gone from like ridiculous to pretty much a normal head of hair. I mean, there's not much missing here. So, but that adjustment was actually quite traumatic because when you're adjusting, it's like, when does the adjustment end? Is this just an adjustment? But I had lots of friends who were. Who lost their hair, and everybody who went thin started going thin in their 20s, and I didn't start going thin until my 40s. Thanks, Foxadre. I mean, I do have a picture, that I think I could find. But I had, because of how the picture was taken, I had to clip most of it out. But it's a real good example of just how, nuts thick my hair was. But my hair did need to be trimmed, and trimming it on the new moon cycle is if you want your hair to thicken up a little bit, you would do that on the new moon cycle. Yeah. It's a little bit there, just like there's a time like for planting seeds and for planting roots, whether it's a rising moon or a waning moon. Similarly, like in other words, during my really thick hair days, if I had wanted maybe for my hair not to be so crazy, trimming it on the waning moon would have helped that. I really appreciate the other planetary tantrikas here putting in the node stuff. I know I like it, so because it's useful, and especially as I learn more and more about it, and if anybody asks a question about it, I guess you guys could supplement it. I have I have two softwares. One is Symphobia, and Lumina, Symphobia. What the hell is the name of it? Um, well, it's very magical. It's I forget. More. There's other ones that are just strings, and this one's quite magical. And then I also have another one that is also very mystical. But what I like about these programs is, although it's all MIDI, and I have a really nice MIDI keyboard, all of the recordings for the MIDI are from actual instruments. So when you're playing violins, they have multiple recordings of actual violins. So none of the sounds as far as the instruments are synthetic. Good night, Nathaniel. And that makes a big difference. And they have different ways of how they've mic'd the instruments. They've mic'd them with a stereo. They've mic'd them right in front, and you can choose them. You can combine them. It's a wonderful program. I actually had done one piece with it, and I have to kind of give myself the learning curve again. And then there was an upgrade, and that's the one thing I don't like about the computer programming is how much of a learning curve I have. It's like learning music all over again. And it's like being a newbie in music. Of course, once you do that, you have a lot more at your command. But I have this. My Yamaha is only 61, but I have this. I have this full 88 type of thing here that for use with those programs. But I have a small room, and so I don't keep it set up all the time, or I have no elbow room left. Oh, Rad, I hope you keep yourself. I'm watching myself in replay here. Oh, good. Because I'm only wearing leggings, and I don't want to tease. My very flat ass is hardly anything to tease. Before I started sitting in a chair, then it might have been, but not anymore. No more. Actually, I should probably sit here and flex them and start building them up again. So how are we doing on time? Oh my God, the time has flown. Oh, the legs have got thinned out a little bit too. I do have. Let's see. I don't know. It's on my other computer. I'll get that picture out. I played at Omega back before I became sedentary, and I weighed like 190 pounds. I now weigh 150 pounds, and I'm wearing leggings, my handmade boots. I have something called an Archer by Maresca that basically it's sleeveless and it only ties in the front. So that's all I'm wearing. That top that has my arms bare, leggings, and boots, and a guitar in front of my stuff. But you can see my leg. You can see my legs, my calves. I was a very stout, not fat at all, but kind of butch. The funniest thing was, I walk around generally in Omega. I'd wear all my robes. So this was a performance night, so I wore some performance clothes. And the funny thing was, after I got off, and some of the people who knew me in my normal tunics and everything else, my rather modest display of myself, they were coming up, and the women who were saying, "Oh, they were like red in their face. They were blushing." It was so funny. I mean, I never quite saw all that blushing as people were just trying to, "Oh, good set, Rad." I had a lot of fun at Omega. Omega was a good place, but just as I left, the poison of social justice and political correctness was creeping in, and Omega had been around for over 30 years, was a great place, and was, kind of had a nice kind of hippie vibe. And when this new stuff started coming in, it was culture shock. And the culture that I knew and loved was shifting rapidly. And it just wasn't, they wanted to tour my tent. And the new culture was unbearable. It really was unbearable. And we didn't have human resources. We had people and culture. And it was a great place, and the old people that were there ran it like people and culture. But they would occasionally bring in some new people who would come from a corporate background, and they started trying to run it like human resources. Oh, what a bad match. It was horrible. Yeah. It's just amazing, the cultural poisons that have really picked up in the last decades, a few years. But I think it's cresting. I mean, it's so toxic. Even a normie is starting to go, "What's that smell? What is that smell?" It's diaper change time. That's what the smell is. So, peeps, I think we have 2 hours and 18 minutes of what I have had a really good time. We're gonna start winding it down. I want to thank everybody who's here for helping me enormously. I mean, if I've provided something for you, my pleasure. But it would really be dishonest of me to not really share with you how much you have helped my sanity and my painful state. I was in pain. I was in psychic pain from coming out of this beautiful world that you can live in her dreaming, and then looking out from her dreaming into the world that other people are experiencing, and experiencing the pain of how much of that world there is on our planet. And once you can spend a lot of time in her dreaming, in train, and like now, we're in training into the moods of the lunar cycles. And when you start to entrain into those moods and listen to the promptings and the inspirations, and until the next new moon, it's green Tara, it's Bhudevi, aesthetics, music, ecology. I mean, these themes, and here's spring coming. We have Beltane, coming up. And I think Beltane's going to come in with a kick this year. I think at an energetic level, like, in other words, like, we have the dreaming world, and then we have that world, the archontic world, and then we have people. There's groups of people who are in the dreaming, and there are people who are not in the dreaming. which is most of the world. And I just think, I don't know, we even spoke about it with Raksha, how like spring seems like, where is spring? I feel spring represents the new. And so in many ways I feel our mother has held off the timing a little bit so that people can get caught up. And I know a lot of people have caught up in these, and basically it's been 6 weeks since spring began when Beltane comes, because that's how we do it. We have the solstice and equinox, and then, you know, it's every 6 weeks, and then we have the in-betweens, like Samhain, Beltane or Imbolc, Candlemas, and what's the other one? Somebody will put it in there. And I know that this kind of like, come on, let's get a few more people on board before we start kicking some ass, has worked, because I'm looking at what's, first of all, Can't You Hear Me Gnostic has grown, and the participation has been great, but also with, you know, the videos are going up, the same videos, but, you know, they're posted on Mandela Effect Decoded, and also on Ginny Thwaite, and also on Hans Carlson. And I go and read the comments, and there are people who are saying, you know, my God, I was feeling so lost, and I just listened to this, and I connected so many dots, and I'm here. So that means that, and this has all happened in the past couple of weeks. This has all been happening in the 6 weeks of the held up spring. And you could say there's like kind of like a sense. I'll call it that. I'm going to keep the syntax, the wording, a little soft. But I remember discussing with Raksha that, you know, spring will arrive on Beltane, and Wrathful Green Tara will be initiating spring. But for those of us in the dreaming, for those of us at some form of being with Mother as we do this, Wrathful Green Tara is not wrathful. She's great. The wrath is only for those who would destroy nature, have no respect. I don't know how that wrath will represent itself. It's not my concern, because we all have been doing what we can. It's not like we're sitting on information and not sharing it. Everybody's sharing it as much as they can. So, you know, to me, how to transition these times with some grace is being offered from so many places. Nobody is trying. Everybody's trying to get as many people on board as possible. And so, if there's some ass kicking that goes with saying, nah, that's just your side, you know, I got my own thing, so be it. So be it. Even when it comes to kicking a little butt, generally the butt will be kicked in the, you know, in the right direction, in the hope that they see the road then. Well, thank you, Oceanside, for calling it schooling. Again, John is the Gnostic teacher. I consider somebody like myself and other people, you know, we're trying to get our act together enough where we can supplement. But Wolf is the teacher, and John is, you know, a wolf. He's a proper teacher. He's a real teacher. And he was also, you know, that selection process. I mean, my big tour about him was he's the man for bringing planetary tantra to the world. And what he's currently trying to do is get other people to be able to do what he's doing. And he's said as much. I'm not putting words in his mouth. He has said it. But there has to be the proper syntax. I mean, it has to be done. This can't be done sloppy. The way he did it, the way she gave it to him, that was my confirmation. That was me being shown who he is and what he's doing and how he's doing that. That the planetary tantra, the Sophianic narrative, and the syntax that goes with it is how she wants it. And I'm picking my words really carefully because John is speaking about more, I mean, he's already given the terma. That terma is clean. The syntax of that terma must stay as it is because it's her terma. So any of us who if we want to be in that class of actually being teachers, our syntax has to be faithful. It's almost like we're going back to, this is an oral tradition, and the oral tradition is done by having the person who has it straight, and then those of us who would like to be there largely so we can get it out more we sit through it and we work with it, and over time we get it right. We get the passages right. It's almost like learning a piece of music. The timing has to be correct. The timbre has to be correct. The right crescendos, the right descendos. This all has to be correct for her message to be delivered correctly. And there's quite a bit of mastery to just giving the basic Sophianic narrative and making sure that it's said in a certain. It starts, it has its middle, and it has its end, and it has its sides, and it can't just be delivered. There is really a method to it, and it's her method. That was one of the notes. That was my instruction about John. Now, John is getting new stuff all the time, and that will be added to it. And he always waits, because you can hear him something, I got something, but I'm still working on it before I can deliver it. And then even very often, as you'll hear, if you really listen to everything John says, he'll sometimes say, I gave you a piece about a year ago, and now I need to insert the corrections of where I was wrong. And part of my instruction was how that's how the process goes. And the more of us that get involved and can actually engage with John, because we have gotten our own instruction and we can come with the goods, then we can start having the sacred circles where we do shamanic sharing, and then we can unpack together. John wants that assistance, but it has to be genuine, and he's a really loving man. He really is. He's a good guy. And what sounds like hard ass and arrogance, I mean, imagine what he has to deliver, and then having a strong, he has a strong personality. So that's the other thing, is when we get our instruction, when we do our shamanic work with her, that's one thing. Now, when we come into our body, and then that has to filter through each one with our unique personalities, it picks up some color. And John is a colorful character. But if you're getting teaching from him and instruction from Sophia, and you can get what is the terma, what is absolute, and what is being unpacked, being refined. I mean, even if you find, if you're mining gold, okay, if you went in there and you found this, gold, just gold, there's not even any matrix in it, it's still not pure gold. There's still a refining process before it is pure gold or pure silver. Even when there's no rock in it, it's still not pure. So that there's always that process, and it's part of the fun. Once you have the Sophianic narrative, there is so much more to come. But we can do a lot. We can start doing that together, but we have to up our game, so you know, like it's like being a musician. If you have somebody who's like this is brilliant and you want to play with them, you're going to bring up your skills before you can play with them without fucking them up. The desire to join a band and play with somebody who's really mastered their instrument, and if the whole thing is that they're under instruction that they must keep this level of mastery up, then the other people who join the band have to, be good enough to be at least play supporting roles in there, even if they're not the soloist. So I guess at an hour, 2.5 hours, I want to not only say goodbye, but give a really heartfelt thanks, agape, that kind of awe, love, because this isn't, the love I'm feeling is big. It's big. So thank you all for journeying with this, this live stream and all of us. And I'm going to mellow out, eat properly, and come away from this stream repaired from poking my nose into the toxic world. And I'm going to be gentle with myself as I wind down. I'm going to be cautious about where I look, because unless I want to go right back into that rough place, I need to be careful. I mean, if you open the shithouse door and you're assaulted by the smell of shit, maybe you shouldn't have opened the door. So, I mean, there's about the choices. So I'm going to have to be wise with my choices to keep this delightful buzz that sharing this sacred space with you people has given me, and I hope that you're buzzing too. So I'm going to hit the stop streaming button, and which will take about 10 seconds or so, maybe 15.